Syria unrest. Arab League sets observer ultimatum. Syria is a few hours away from deadline to allow an Arab League observer mission into the country or be subjected to sanctions. The Arab League wants 500 observers to enter the country. If Syria fails to sign an arrangement in Cairo by 11 GMT, the Arab League says it will meet on Saturday to decide what sanctions to impose on that country. More than 3,500 people have died since anti-government protests began in March, the United Nations estimates. The government of President Bashar al-Assad blames the violence on armed gangs and militants. At least 40 people, including 6 children, have been killed across Syria in the past 3 days, activists say. These reports are difficult to verify as foreign journalists are unable to move around Syria freely. Unified position, the options for sanctions include a suspension of commercial flights to Syria and a halt on all dealings with its central bank. Earlier this month, the Arab League voted and suspended Syria and warned of unspecified sanctions for not implementing a peace plan. One of the main sticking points was Damascus' demand to amend the proposal for 500 observers to be allowed into Syria. Damascus was reportedly wanted to reduce the number to 40, a request rejected by the 22-member league. In addition, a deadline for Syria to end its crackdown passed last Saturday night with no sign of the violence abating. Syria has now offered anything to move the situation forward. A senior league diplomat was quoted as saying by Reuters news agency on Thursday. The position of the Arab states is almost unified, he said, adding that all agreed there should be no civil war or foreign intervention. The diplomats also appealed to the United Nations to prevent further violence, asking UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon to take all measures to support the efforts of Arab League to resolve the critical situation in Syria. The venue on Thursday meeting in Cairo had to be moved away from the Arab League headquarters because there are continuing protests against Egypt's ruling military council in Tahrir Square. Moroccans vote parliamentary polls following reform. Moroccans have begun voting in parliamentary elections. The poll in the North African kingdom was brought forward in response to Arab Spring uprisings. It is the first since introduction of a new constitution proposed by King Mohammed VI was approved by a referendum in July. It is expected to be a close contest between a moderate Islamist opposition party and a new coalition of liberals with close ties to the royal palace. Both Parliament and the Prime Minister will have greater powers under the new constitution. The Prime Minister must now be appointed by the King from the party which wins the most seats in the Assembly. However, the King still has the final say on issue of defense, security and religion. Polling stations opened at 8 GMT and are due to close at 19. The reporters in Rabat says that the polls are seen as a test of the King's response to the Arab Spring and his gamble of ceding some of his powers to elected officials. But he says turnout is expected to be low, with little political campaigning and even less excitement on the streets. The pro-reform February 20 movement, responsible for the protest staged just before the King announced his plans to reform the constitution, has called for a boycott of Friday election. Some voters said they would not vote as they had little faith that it would change anything. "I'm not going to vote, and I say it with my head held high," Aicha, a housewife in the mountain village of Tidas, told AFP news agency. Pakistan woman killed and cooked husband in Karachi. Police in Pakistan say they have arrested a woman for killing and cooking her husband in the southern city of Karachi. Zainab Ahmad's nephew was also detained in connection with the murder. Neither suspect has made any comment. Investigations are still ongoing, but police say they believe she drugged her husband after he attempted to rape her daughter from an earlier marriage. She then butchered him and cooked some body parts in broth, police say. The stench alerted the neighbors, who then contacted the police, officials say. Police say the formal charges will be held and filed in the coming days.
ऐसे गुल मोहम्मद है, उसको इलाके के लोगों ने बताया कि फला घर से कोई बदबू सी उठ रही है। तो जब जाके चेक किया तो पीछे वाले दरवाजे से खातून निकल के भागने लगी। तो इसमें मोहल्ले के लड़कों ने बड़ा एफर्ट्स किए कि उस खातून को पकड़ा। जब ये पुलिस अंदर गई है तो पता चला कि जी वो बदबू क्यों आ रही है। तो वो पतीले में और वो देगचे में उसकी डेड बॉडी वगैरह पड़ी हुई थी सामने। तो पीछे से लड़कों ने पकड़ लिया उस खातून को पुलिस ने, और फिर ऐसे इन्फॉर्म हुआ कि ये वाकया हुआ है। और अभी लेकर आए, तफ्तीश कर रहे हैं। खातून भी अरेस्ट है, वो आला कत्ल भी रिकवर है, और क्यों मारा रीज़न वो भी बता दिया आप लोगों को कि किस वजह से मारा। कि पहले शौहर की इसकी जो बेटी है उस पर ये बुरी नज़र रखता था बकौल खातून के। अब फर्दर अभी तफ्तीश करने में पता चलेगा कि असल हक़ाइक़ क्या है।
We'll move on the business world. US stores seek post-Thanksgiving boom. US retailers hope borders of bargaining hunters can lift economic gloom as the holiday shopping season begins. After polishing off Thanksgiving turkeys, millions of Americans will head to the shops on Friday for busiest shopping day of the year. Black Friday is so called as it's when many retailers head out of the red and into the black, sees many stores open at midnight. Or even earlier this year, half of the entire US population is expected to hit the shops this weekend. The National Retail Federation (NRF) said 152 million people would visit stores in search of bargains this weekend, up to 10% from the last year. Consumer spending accounts for about 70% of the US economic activity. Welcome to the world of science. Nuclear power gets little public support worldwide. There is little public appetite across the world for building new nuclear reactors, a poll for the BBC indicates. In countries with nuclear programs, people are significantly more opposed than they were in 2005, with only the UK and US bucking the trend. Most believe that boosting efficiency and the renewables can meet their needs. Just 22% agreed that nuclear power is relatively safe and an important source of electricity, and we should build more nuclear power plants. In contrast, 71% thought their country could almost entirely replace coal and nuclear energy within 20 years by becoming highly energy efficient and focusing on generating energy from the sun and wind. Globally, 39 want to continue using existing reactors without building new ones, while 30% would like to shut everything down now itself. GlobeScan polled 23,231 people in 23 countries from July to September this year, several months after an earthquake and giant tsunami devastated Japan's Fukushima Daiichi power station. And in sports, Sachin Tendulkar misses out on historic 100th century. India legend Sachin Tendulkar fell 6 runs short of his 100th international 100 as he was out of 94 in third and final test against West Indies in his home city of Mumbai. Having cruised from 67 to 94 on fourth morning, he sliced Ravi Rampol to skipper Darren Sammy at second slip. Tendulkar, who has 51 test centuries and 48 in one-day internationals, had been struck on 99 hundreds since March. But this is the closest he has come to the landmark of a century of centuries. The crowd who were packed into the Wankhede Stadium in anticipation of Tendulkar's achievement were left stunned as their idol came so close to the feat that has been expected of him since the World Cup earlier this year. Anticipation has grown after he made his 99th 100 against South Africa at the World Cup, and interest had centered on him throughout India's troubled summer tour of England, where the nearest he came to three figures was scoring 91 on the last day of the Test series at Oval. And before we close today's bulletin of news analysis, let's have a recap of the main points. Egypt unrest, military apologizes for protest death. India to open market to global supermarket chains. J.K. Rowling tells Leveson inquiry of press intrusion. Syria unrest, Arab League sets observer ultimatum. Moroccans vote in parliamentary polls following reform. Pakistan woman killed and cooked husband in Karachi. And there we end today's bulletin of news analysis. Be with us in the coming weeks too. Thank you.